If you walked into the most luxurious restaurant in the city and saw a quiet girl scrubbing dishes in a dark corner, would you ever think she held the power to fire the manager? This story doesn't begin with glory. It begins with grease, dirty water, and a pair of yellow rubber gloves. A young woman entered Lumiere restaurant under the lowest possible title, dish pit worker. No one knew who she was. No one pronounced her name right. And everyone believed they had the right to boss her around. But they were wrong. Over the next 21 days, she wouldn't just listen, observe, and endure. She would quietly gather evidence, document every injustice, and wait for the right moment to act. This isn't just another undercover boss story. This is a blueprint for silent justice. Expert insight says, to truly change a system, you don't need a megaphone. You need to step into the lowest place and stay there long enough to see where the roots are rotten. And the most terrifying part is when the one you thought was the lowest turns out to be the one rewriting the rules. Don't miss a second of this story. If you believe kindness can rebuild a broken system, like and subscribe to follow the full journey of the dishwasher's daughter. We begin where no one wants to look. The golden light of dawn filtered through the treetops, gently brushing against the Lumiere sign hanging above the restaurant entrance. A French-style restaurant nestled in the heart of Manhattan, where a single dinner could cost half a month's salary, and its name, Lumiere, had long become a symbol of refinement and luxury in New York's culinary world. But this morning, someone came not to dine. She stepped out of an old electric car, her hair tied back under a frayed baseball cap, holding a worn canvas bag carrying her non-slip shoes. A faded gray t-shirt, washed-out jeans with thinning knees, and tucked into her coat pocket. A pair of bright yellow rubber gloves, the only thing on her that shone brighter than the restaurant sign. "Name," a dry voice called out from the employee check-in counter. "Chloe. Rains," she answered quickly with a deliberate pause. That girl wasn't a stranger. Chloe Langston, the only daughter of Howard Langston, founder and owner of the prestigious Lumiere restaurant chain. But this morning, Chloe wasn't a director, wasn't an heiress, wasn't a media darling. This morning, she was a dishwasher, temporary hire, minimum wage, shift work, an experiment she had personally requested, though no one here was allowed to know that. No one knew she had graduated from Harvard with a degree in management, interned at elite European restaurants, or had once sat in million-dollar boardroom meetings beside her father. No one knew that today, everything they said, everything they did, would be recorded by her. Her first morning began with the smell of grease and industrial cleaner. Chloe was assigned to the dish pit, the deep kitchen corner where dishes were washed. No natural light, no air conditioning, just walls of dirty plates and scalding hot water blasting from the industrial hose. 10 hours straight, no breaks, no complaints. Don't ask unnecessary questions. Break a dish? That's money out of your pay. A tall woman with a tight ponytail, wearing a black shirt, barked those words directly in Chloe's face. That was Kara, the kitchen manager, a figure of authority here, known for her cold demeanor and ruthless discipline. Kara scanned Chloe from head to toe like she just pulled her from a dumpster. "Another dish girl, huh? Hope you're not too soft." Then turned to another employee with a smirk. "Looks like they're hiring the quiet ones now, not the competent ones." Chloe didn't reply, just nodded slightly. She didn't come here to argue. Her hands slowly adjusted to the rhythm of the kitchen. Load, scrub, spray, stack. The hot water burned, but she didn't stop. Each dirty dish she cleaned felt like she was scrubbing away a layer of prejudice. An hour in, as she crouched under the sink, unclogging food waste, Kara reappeared. "Clean the men's bathroom too. Jose's off today. And you look eager." Chloe looked up, brow furrowing slightly. "The bathroom? I thought I was assigned to the dish pit." "Here, whoever's weaker gets the filthier job. That's the rule. But if you'd rather quit today, I'll happily sign you off." Kara grinned and tossed her a dirty pair of gloves, still stained with dried blood. Chloe took them without a word. But deep inside, something stirred. This was no longer just a business lesson. This was a raw portrait of reality. in a place where tip money was split behind closed doors like envelopes at a backroom poker game, where employees were labeled with demeaning nicknames, mosquito, lazy cow, black dog, where respect was reserved only for those in crisp uniforms, not for the ones who cleaned them. Mid-shift, Chloe asked for a 5-minute break to get water. Kara checked her watch, then nodded. Fine, but if you're not back in exactly 5 minutes, don't bother coming back at all. Chloe sat on the steps behind the kitchen, holding a water bottle, hands still smelling of sanitizer. A younger employee walked past, giving her a glance that held a trace of sympathy. First day? Chloe nodded. Don't let her break you. She thinks kindness is weakness. That sentence, simple as it was, etched itself into Chloe's mind. When the shift ended, Kara approached. Listen up, Rains. I don't know where you came from or who got you in here, but I know your type. Here today, gone tomorrow, just like the rest of the trash. And if you embarrass me even once, I'll have you out of here before your apron hits the hook. Chloe looked Kara straight in the eyes. She didn't nod. She didn't argue. Just a calm gaze, neither afraid nor angry. And that silence was what unsettled Kara most. As Chloe stepped out the back door of the restaurant into the night, she took off her gloves, slipped them into her pocket like a soldier sheathing her sword after the first battle. This war, she knew, was only just beginning. Every morning at Lumiere began with the clinking of metal, the rattle of cutlery, the constant hum of boiling water, and Kara's voice slicing through the air like an alarm bell. Chloe had grown familiar with the distinct smell of the dish pit, a cocktail of cleaning chemicals, mold clinging to old stainless steel trays, and the sour undertone of dish rags long past their prime, still reeking of raw meat despite countless washes. This morning, Kara arrived in the kitchen earlier than usual. In her hand was a pricey paper cup latte, and hanging from her collar, a pair of Prada sunglasses. No one dared ask why she was early. At Lumiere, when Kara showed up ahead of schedule, it meant one thing. It wasn't going to be a peaceful day. Linda, why haven't you changed into a clean apron yet? I've told you 100 times. Customers walk past the open kitchen. You look like you just crawled out of a basement, Kara shrieked, her voice bouncing off the kitchen tiles. Linda, a middle-aged African-American woman, bowed her head slightly. I'm sorry, I haven't been issued a new one. Don't care. Irresponsibility is a choice, not a circumstance, Kara snapped, then turned toward Chloe, who was quietly scrubbing blood-stained butcher knives left from the night before. And you? Don't think I didn't notice you chatting with Miguel yesterday. There are no friends here, just people who still have jobs, and people who don't. Kara walked away, but Chloe's gaze didn't falter. She said nothing, but every word Kara spoke felt like barbed wire scraping deep within her, not just because of the injustice, but because of how familiar this kind of power was, the kind that didn't stem from title, but from the fear one could breed around them. After the breakfast prep, staff began gathering around the old coffee urn in the back of the kitchen. Miguel, the lanky Latino prep cook with eyes that always seemed lost in thought, walked up to Chloe. You okay? He asked gently, noticing her rinsing her blistered thumb under cold water. I'm fine, Chloe replied, curt. Miguel shrugged. You were wiping down those knives like you were working through some serious issues. I'm pretty sure they need therapy now. His joke drew a faint smile. Chloe's first in 2 days. I'm just learning how to survive, she said. Miguel leaned against the stainless steel counter, lowering his voice. Don't just learn to survive. Around here, you've got to learn the unspoken rules. Unspoken rules? Chloe tilted her head. Yeah. Kara splits the staff into 3 groups. Gold. They get full tips, choice shifts, schedule flexibility. Usually her favorites, cousins, friends, or loyal waitstaff. And the rest? Gray, regulars. Do their hours, stay invisible. And black, the ones like Linda, Jose, and you today. Chloe looked at him. I thought Kara didn't know who I was. Miguel nodded. She doesn't, which is exactly why you're in the lowest tier. Chloe didn't respond immediately. She knew what it felt like to be categorized. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't just a witness to that system, she was inside it, labeled, ranked. By midday, the kitchen descended into chaos. Order tickets flooded the printer. Chefs yelled over each other. A pot of sauce spilled, streaking red across the floor. Kara's polished black shoes caught the splash. "Chloe, clean that up, now, and take out the trash under the sink." Chloe knelt to wipe the mess, but before she could lay down the rag, Kara nudged the trash can with her foot, spilling grimy water across Chloe's sleeve. "Oops, maybe I should teach you how to clean like someone who actually wants to work," Kara said mockingly, before turning away as if nothing had happened. Chloe clenched her fist, but stayed silent. Not because she was afraid, because she was watching. Later, Linda, the same woman Kara humiliated that morning, collapsed in the walk-in fridge from exhaustion. Chloe and Miguel rushed in. Kara stood at the door, arms crossed. "I told her not to overdo it, but people like her love playing the victim," Kara said loudly, making sure other staff could hear. Chloe helped lift Linda, but her eyes burned, not just with concern, but with something rising and sharper. Not patience anymore. Anger. After Linda was taken to rest in the back alley, Chloe returned to her post in silence. But that night, she pulled out her phone, switched on the voice memo app, and set it on the stainless steel shelf, just beneath a non-functioning security camera. The night shift dragged on like a war of attrition. With every passing minute, Chloe uncovered more of Lumiere's shadow structure. Tips withheld. Leftover food repackaged and resold to takeout customers. Shifts cut without notice. She recorded it all. Photos, audio, words. Cara mocking immigrants like Jose. Female staff being forced to wear uniforms 2 sizes too small to look slimmer. After her shift, Chloe stepped out to the trash area behind the kitchen. Miguel followed and handed her the phone she'd left behind. "What are you doing?" he asked, more serious than usual. Chloe looked at him, proving something. Miguel fell silent, then gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I don't know who you are, but if you can change this place, don't stop." Chloe nodded, said nothing, because in her mind, things had never been clearer. That night, in the small rented room she'd chosen to stay close to the restaurant, Chloe plugged her phone into her laptop. She played the recording of Kara berating Linda, then the clip where Kara laughed and said, "They should be grateful they have a job. Who checks kitchens anyway? Who cares about the dish girl?" Chloe didn't answer her, but inside one sentence rang louder than any scream. "I care." And tomorrow she would begin making sure the whole world did too. Friday, 5:47 p.m., New York in humid season, with a fine drizzle painting streaks across the kitchen window, like a melting canvas. But inside Lumiere, everything remained dazzling, radiant, and perfectly choreographed like a Broadway production. On time, on cue, no tolerance for error. The night shift was the harshest one. That's when Manhattan's elite poured into Lumiere, dressed in designer outfits, placing complex orders and expecting absolute perfection. Every plate had to look like a work of art. Every wine glass had to be angled precisely with the logo facing outward. And every second of delay was a reason to complain or drop a 1-star review on Yelp. Amid all that glamour, Chloe, in her faded uniform, rubber gloves on, hair in a loose bun, was still tucked in the dish pit corner, facing a mountain of plates left over from the afternoon shift. "Hurry up, Chloe. This isn't a fast food joint. You call that clean?" Kara's sharp voice rang out behind her. Chloe looked up. It was a small foie gras plate with a faint streak of sauce barely visible to the naked eye. She turned the faucet on and rinsed it again. Kara snatched the plate. "Do you know who's eating this? That's the wife of a state senator. If you embarrass me in front of them, I swear I'll drag you out of here by your hair." Without waiting for a reply, Kara stormed back toward the kitchen line. Voices trickled in from the dining area. Refined laughter, the clink of wine glasses, a jazz piano drifting from the stage corner. Chloe bowed her head and kept scrubbing. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear of Kara, but because she could feel herself fading, bit by bit. The night shift pressed on, tension tight like a wire. At 7:25 p.m., something went wrong. A tray of specialty sauce, reserved exclusively for VIP guests, spilled across the hallway between the kitchen and the service corridor. A wide red streak spread across the pure white stone floor like a bloodstain. "Chloe!" Kara roared. Chloe rushed over with a mop, trying to clean it before anyone slipped. but Kara yanked the mop away and slammed it to the floor. You think that's how you clean? You've got no brain. The kitchen paused. Nobody said a word. The head chefs averted their eyes, pretending to focus on their soups. A female server turned away, lips pressed tight. Kara stepped forward, grabbed a metal cup of icy water from the counter, and in that perfect silence, she flung it directly at Chloe. No warning. The cold water soaked her stained uniform, still sudsy from cleaning fluid. Chloe stood frozen, droplets falling from her hair onto the tile. The yellow gloves hung heavy at her sides. Outside the small service window, the dining room still glowed as if nothing had happened. Kara sniffed. There. Now you're clean enough to keep going. Remember, I don't bluff. If you embarrass this restaurant again, I won't wait for the owner to fire you. I'll do it myself. Miguel stood nearby. He took a step forward, but Kara's eyes fired a warning. You get involved, you go next. Linda turned away, wiping her tears. Chloe said nothing. She bent down, picked up the mop, and resumed cleaning. Not fast, not slow. Her hands moved steadily, like she was controlling the pain itself. 20 minutes later, the restaurant entered peak hour. Chloe returned to the dish pit, trying to keep everything flowing. But Kara didn't stop. You're letting water pool back here. Can you please just once do something right? Kara shouted, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. A group dining near the open kitchen turned their heads. Among them, a blonde woman shook her head subtly. One of the newer staff whispered, She's on the owner's family contact list. Kara shouldn't be making noise like that. But Kara didn't care. To her, this was performance, and Chloe was just a background extra with no lines. Kara approached, pointing directly at Chloe's face. This is the last time I'm telling you. If you want to keep this job, shut your mouth and follow orders. Lumiere is not a place for people like you. You understand? Chloe swallowed hard. She had listened. She had observed. She had endured. But now her eyes no longer avoided anything. I understand, she replied. Her voice was so calm, it made Kara hesitate for just a second. Good, Kara snapped, then walked off. After the shift, Miguel waited for Chloe in the back. Hey, want to grab a bite? I know a cheap taco place just next door. Chloe shook her head. Thanks, but I need to document a few things tonight. Miguel looked at her, then asked softly, What are you going to do about what Kara did? Chloe didn't answer right away, but the look in her eyes, that wasn't the look of a dish pit worker. It was the look of someone remembering every detail, every word, every glance, preparing for a day not far off, when the silence would end. That night, in her small rented room, Chloe sat at her desk and unlocked her phone. She replayed the footage of Kara throwing the water. Some guests had looked over. Some staff had looked down. No one spoke up. But Kara's voice came through crystal clear. Lumiere is not a place for people like you. Chloe wrote that line in her notebook, just beneath one single sentence. Let's test that. The next day, New York was drowning in heavy rain. A downpour so fierce it felt like the whole city was trying to wash itself clean. But in a small rented room on 14th Street, no amount of rain could cleanse what weighed on Chloe Langston's chest. She sat motionless on a chair, a towel draped loosely over her shoulders, hair still wet from a midnight shower. In her hand was a plain A4 sheet with just a few bolded lines. Resignation notice. Chloe Rains, dish pit assistant, Lumiere, Manhattan. Effective immediately. A resignation letter. There it lay, light as air, yet somehow crushing her chest with invisible weight. Every part of Chloe's body ached, wrists sore from spraying water all night, shoulders strained from lifting heavy trays, back stiff from hours bent under the steel counters. But the deepest pain wasn't physical. It had no form. It was humiliation, injustice, and the silence of those who knew better, but still bowed their heads. She remembered the moment Kara flung cold water at her, in front of everyone, and no one said a word. She remembered Linda, the older woman quietly wiping tears after being insulted for her skin color. She remembered the way Miguel looked at her as if to say, if you walk away, nothing here will ever change. 9:02 a.m. Chloe slipped the resignation into an envelope. She didn't show up at Lumiere that day. For the first time in nearly a week, she stepped off the treadmill. Wearing an old hoodie and a cap, she walked into the rain with no destination in mind, just the certainty that she couldn't go back. Not yet. A coffee shop on the corner of Lexington and 8th Avenue had one empty seat left. Chloe took the farthest corner, ordered a black drip, no sugar, no laptop, no phone, just herself and her exhaustion. Through the foggy window, she saw a group of delivery workers pushing carts in the rain, ponchos shredded and flapping. She saw an older man standing quietly beneath the post office awning, holding a cardboard sign, "We'll do anything for work." Suddenly, every voice echoing in her head collided into one. Lumiere is not a place for people like you. Here, whoever's weaker cleans the filthier mess. That's the rule. If you embarrass me again, I'll drag you out myself. And finally, softer but clearer than the rest. If you're someone who matters, then stand up and change it. Miguel's voice, 2:18 p.m. Back at her apartment, a folded note lay on the floor in front of her door. If you're planning to leave, at least say goodbye. I'm out back on break. Chloe held the note, hesitation creeping in. She had already packed her intent to leave. But Miguel, he was the only one in that whole place who didn't see her, through the layers of grease, soap, or torn uniform. He saw the real person, and that made it harder for her to walk away clean. 4:31 p.m. The back door of the restaurant opened quietly. Chloe stepped in, raincoat on, face bare, resignation envelope still in her pocket. Miguel sat on an overturned produce crate, halfway through a stale sandwich. He looked up, surprised. "I thought you were gone for good." Chloe sat on a plastic bin beside him. "I thought so too." Miguel didn't ask questions. After a moment, he sighed. "I used to think no one could ever change this place." Chloe stayed quiet. Then Miguel spoke again, his voice slower, deeper than usual. 3 years ago, Mr. Howard Langston showed up here once. No one recognized him. I was the one who sliced his bread. The next day, I got a scholarship to community culinary school with a note that read, "Kind people don't need to know they're being watched." I still keep that note. Chloe looked up. "You've never told anyone that?" Miguel shook his head. "Around here, if you say something good, people think you're dreaming." Silence fell between them. The rain outside still drizzled, like the soundtrack of a sad movie. Chloe pulled the envelope from her pocket and laid it in her lap. Miguel glanced at it. "Who were you going to give it to?" "To Kara." Miguel leaned back. "So you're letting her win?" Chloe let out a tired smile. "She's not winning. I'm just not sure I have anything left." Miguel looked her straight in the eye. "You know, I thought you were different. Guess I was wrong." Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because you treat washing dishes like punishment. But for people like us, it's survival. And if you're quitting just because someone disrespected you, then how are you any different from the owners who stand above us, never knowing what it's like down here?" His words cut deep, not with bitterness, but truth. Chloe didn't reply. Her gaze drifted as if a door inside her had quietly opened. Then, without a word, she tore open the envelope and ripped the resignation letter into pieces. Miguel nodded, as if he'd been waiting for that moment. He reached out and gently patted her shoulder. "There's still a lot you need to see." Chloe looked at him, then smiled faintly. "And I'm starting to believe I need to see it." 7 p.m. Kara stormed back into the kitchen like a storm in pressed linen, her white shirt crisp as if last night's chaos had never happened. She glanced at Chloe wiping down a counter, startled to see her still there, but said nothing, just sneered. "So someone figured out how to crawl back." Chloe didn't look up. She replied, "I'm not done yet." Kara smirked, then walked away. That night after the shift ended, Chloe sat alone in the dish pit. The low yellow lights cast shadows across stacks of clean white plates. For the first time, they looked less like a burden and more like a fortress waiting to be broken. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through recordings, photos, collected over the past week. Kara yelling, Linda crying, customers frowning, staff berated, scattered fragments. But she knew soon they'd piece together into a full picture. In her notebook, Chloe wrote the first line of a new plan. "Not because of who my father is, but because I refuse to watch this happen one more day." At 5:58 a.m., The Langston Holdings building was still bathed in the dim glow of maintenance lights. A young front desk attendant, just starting his shift, let out a long yawn. He hadn't even typed Chloe Raines into the visitor log when the woman in the gray coat strode straight into the elevator. No one stopped her, not because they knew who she was, but because her presence didn't invite questions. As the elevator doors closed, Chloe pulled off her hood and took a long breath. She hadn't slept all night, her mind racing to connect every thread. And this morning, she wasn't here to give a report. She was here to challenge the very man who once taught her never to challenge anyone. Floor 32, chairman's office. The hallway was carpeted and silent, like a library of secrets. Chloe pushed the door open. Inside, Howard Langston stood facing the window, watching the city awaken through a pane nearly 10 feet tall. He was exactly as she remembered. Black suit, pale gray shirt, hands in his pockets. He didn't have to turn to know who had just walked in. "I heard Ms. Raines submitted her resignation," he said, still facing the glass. Chloe paused mid-step. "But I assume that's no longer accurate." Howard turned. His eyes were still sharp, but there was something else behind them, something new, as if he were reassessing the daughter he once believed couldn't survive a week outside a boardroom. Chloe stepped forward and sat in the leather chair across from the desk, the same chair where, at 17, she had sketched out a dream restaurant chain, believing her father would listen. Today, she didn't need him to listen. She needed him to choose a side. "You already know?" she asked bluntly. Howard nodded. "Kara sent an email yesterday morning. She said you were disruptive, non-compliant, affecting kitchen productivity." "You believe her?" Chloe asked, letting the sarcasm slip through. "I believe in the system, at least, until someone proves the system wrong." That line made Chloe smile faintly. She pulled a USB from her coat pocket and placed it on the desk without a word. Howard eyed the small device for a moment before picking it up. "What's this?" "Evidence," Chloe replied, "of discrimination, abuse of authority, illegal wage deductions, and how Lumiere is slowly killing the spirit it was built on." Howard didn't respond right away, but Chloe could see it in his eyes. The internal war between the instincts of a man who built an empire and the intuition of a father who knew his daughter wasn't lying. He stood, turned his back to her again, and stared down at the city, this time with a gaze less controlled, more distant. "Why are you doing this? You didn't need to suffer just to inherit what was already yours." Chloe stood, taking one step closer. Her voice now held no softness, no hesitation, only clarity. "I don't want to inherit Lumiere. I want to save it. And to do that, I need a real shot, not an office on the 30th floor. I need the authority to change things from within." Howard said nothing. 1 minute. 2. It felt like forever. Then he exhaled. "A real shot?" he asked, turning to face her again. "You want the Manhattan branch?" Chloe gave a small nod. Howard walked to the safe, placed the USB inside, and returned to his desk. "You have 3 weeks, full control. If Lumiere Manhattan improves revenue, boosts customer ratings, and retains staff, you win. If not, I'll walk away," Chloe finished for him. "No excuses, no appeals." Howard nodded. A moment of silence passed. Brief, but it felt like a treaty being signed between 2 generations. He extended his hand. "Not because you're my daughter, but because for the first time I see a real Langston." Chloe shook his hand. "And for the first time, Lumiere will have a leader who knows exactly what burnt grease smells like." On her way out of the building, Chloe didn't call a cab. She walked down 5th Avenue. The rain had stopped. The lights from the towers spilled onto the sidewalk like windows watching every step she took. But these weren't the footsteps of a girl who once got yelled at in a dish pit. These were the steps of someone who had just claimed her right to lead. Not by the Langston name, but by standing in the soap-stained corners of her own restaurant kitchen. Back in her room, she opened her laptop, created a new folder, Project Phoenix, Rebuild Lumiere from the Fire. And the first line she typed inside it was, "Step 1, don't fire Kara yet. Let her finish digging her own grave." That day from the outside, Lumiere Manhattan looked the same as ever. The golden sign still gleamed. The head chef still snapped over custom orders. Kara still strutted through the kitchen like it was her personal runway. But something had changed, and it was standing in the dish pit, hair tied back, faded uniform, and those same yellow gloves. Chloe Langston was back, as an anonymous dishwasher. No one knew she had just been handed full executive control of the branch by her father. No one knew today would be the last time Kara threw a silver spoon without consequence. And certainly no one knew that every word, every action was now being recorded by a newly reinstalled covert camera system, set up the night before by Chloe herself. She returned looking like a loser, but in truth this was her final hand, and she was turning over the cards. "You came back? I thought that toilet finally scared you off for good," Kara sneered when she saw Chloe walk in. A few staff members chuckled, not out of humor, but habit. Chloe gave a slight nod, saying nothing. She knew those who talk the loudest are always the closest to losing. Kara handed her a bucket of dirty water. "Clean the bathroom floors, then get back to dishes, and this time, try not to daydream mid-shift." By 4 p.m., Chloe had completed the workload of 3 people. She didn't speak. She simply observed. The moment the head chef yelled at the Asian cook for using the wrong oil, the moment Kara pulled 3 20s from the tip jar and handed them to her bestie Holly, the moment Linda quietly hand-dried each glass because the rinse machine was broken, even though it wasn't her job. These weren't just things Chloe saw. They were now data points. Every blind spot had a camera. Every word was being saved to a private server. And today had one more twist. A guest was on the way. Someone Kara had bragged about for months. "The one who could get me promoted to national if I nail this," she once said. Chloe knew, because she was the one who invited him. 6:58 p.m. The restaurant entered golden hour. Light jazz started playing from the stage. Staff rushed. Guests swarmed in. Kara, dressed in a black blazer and bold red lipstick, stood at the front, waiting for her VIP. A black Mercedes glided to the curb. The door opened. A silver-haired man stepped out, midnight blue tailored suit, a smile so familiar with power it barely needed to assert itself. Howard Langston. Kara nearly leapt out of her heels. She rushed forward, extending a hand. "Mr. Langston, we're honored to—" Howard raised his hand gently to cut her off. "Tonight, I'm not here as the owner. I'm just a customer, and I want to be treated like every other guest." Kara blinked, then tried to recover. "Of course. I'll personally serve you." Howard shook his head. "No need. I'd like to be served by the most competent person here." Kara smiled sweetly, scanning the room. "Certainly, then let me—" "Ms. Chloe," Howard interrupted, "would you help me choose something from the menu?" The entire dining room turned. Kara froze. Staff exchanged looks. Chloe stepped out from the dish pit, gloves still on. She slowly removed them, took off her apron, and walked toward the table. Not as a dishwasher, but as someone fully in control. "An honor, sir," she said calmly. The kitchen went silent. Kara's face went pale. Miguel stared at Chloe like he was seeing someone entirely new. Linda whispered, "Who is she?" 7:15 p.m. Chloe returned to the kitchen after serving Howard's entree. She stood in the middle of the floor, clapped twice, and raised her voice just enough. "May I have 1 minute?" Kara opened her mouth to protest, but Chloe walked to the side and opened a small control panel. A large screen flipped down. A video began to play. It showed Kara berating Linda, pocketing tip money and saying, "They don't deserve that kind of cash." It showed her sneering, "Chloe's useless. Let me teach her what rock bottom really looks like." Kara screamed, "What the hell is this? What did you do with the cameras?" Chloe met her gaze, no longer with the eyes of a dishwasher, but of someone holding all the power. "I'm Chloe Langston," she said evenly, "daughter of Howard Langston, and I officially took over this branch yesterday." Gasps echoed across the restaurant. Some guests stood. Staff covered their mouths. Chloe continued, "I've been here, washing dishes, cleaning toilets, working nights. I heard every insult, every threat, and I don't need anyone to believe I'm capable. I just need them to see real power doesn't shout." Howard rose from his table and slowly began clapping. Another guest joined, then another, until the entire dining room erupted in applause. not because of her last name, but because they had just witnessed something few in power ever dare to do. Endure in silence, understand the broken system, then change it. Kara stood frozen. Chloe walked over, placed a folder in her hands. This is your termination notice, along with signed complaints from staff, backed by evidence. You have the right to remain silent, but everything you've said has already been recorded. That night, Chloe returned to the dish pit, not to work, just to stand there. She placed her hand on the steel basin, staring at the dishes as if looking at an older version of herself. She took out the yellow gloves, not to wear them, but to place them in a wooden box. On the lid, she labeled it, "The Final Shift," for everyone who had to wash more than just dishes. Chloe Langston has revealed her true identity. Kara has faced the consequences. But this story is just beginning. In the next chapters, you won't just witness the fall of the old. You'll witness the rebirth of everything long forgotten. Chloe won't stop at a single termination. She will rebuild an entire system from the hands of those once seen as the lowest. The invisible will be seen. The silenced will rise. And sometimes change doesn't begin with a shout. It begins with someone brave enough to watch, wait, and act when the time is right. If you believe in quiet justice and kindness, strong enough to rebuild a broken world, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't miss the next chapters. 3 days after that fateful night at Lumiere, the news traveled faster than any waiter who had ever hustled across the restaurant floor. Everyone was talking about the same thing. The dishwasher girl was the owner's daughter, and she had just fired the manager in front of a full dining room. On TikTok, the clip of Chloe saying, "Real power doesn't need to shout," reached over 12 million views in 48 hours. On Reddit, a thread titled, "She Wore Gloves, but She Had the Real Hands of Power," was pinned to the front page. And on LinkedIn, hospitality CEOs across states began commenting, "Maybe it's time we started in the dish pit." But amid the media storm, Chloe remained silent. No press conference, no TV appearance. She simply sent a PDF to the entire staff of Lumiere Manhattan. 3 lines only. Monday morning, 10 a.m. All staff, regardless of rank. Emergency meeting. Attendance required. Anyone who's ever been dismissed will be heard today. 10 a.m. Lumiere Manhattan, main conference room. Over 40 employees crowded into a room usually reserved for VIP wine tasting presentations. Today there was no Prosecco, no canapes, just filtered water, warm yellow lights, and a silence thick with expectation. Miguel sat beside Linda. A line cook whose hours had been cut 3 months earlier showed up. Even Jose, the quiet Mexican porter, wore a freshly ironed shirt. And then the door opened. Chloe stepped in. No elegant dress, no power blazer, just a simple white button-down, black trousers, and a large clipboard in hand. She stood at the front. No microphone needed. "I know you're not here out of curiosity," she began. "You're here because you're hoping." The room stayed silent. "I've stood where you stood, got yelled at, pulled the heaviest shifts, got skipped on tips, wasn't allowed to speak." She paused, took a deep breath, looked each of them in the eye. "And today, I'm not here to retell that story. I'm here to start a new one." She lifted the clipboard and flipped the first page. Big, bold title, "The Horizon Program, From Dish Pit to Leadership." A young server whispered, "What kind of program is this?" Chloe smiled. "Horizon is a new path, a program starting next week built on 4 pillars. 1. Profit sharing. 10% of branch profits will be shared with employees who've been here over 1 year. 2nd, tip reform. The old tip pool is gone. All tips will now be split fairly based on actual hours worked. 3. Internal training. Any staff can enroll in leadership, culinary, or finance courses. 4th, Equity Board. A 5-person committee, chosen by staff, will oversee management behavior and ensure accountability. The room stirred. Linda's eyes widened. Miguel leaned in, whispering, "She's actually serious." Chloe continued, "I don't believe in good bosses. I believe in timely ones. And if I don't start now, then who will?" She flipped to the final page. A photo. Chloe in the dish pit, wearing yellow gloves, back hunched, scrubbing a scorched pot. Below the image, one line. Where there's sweat, there's worth. A server stood up. It was Ivy, the one Kara had once called a lifeless machine. I I never thought someone from the top would ever stoop low enough to hear us. Chloe nodded. You don't need to bow your head to be heard. We're going to rebuild a Lumiere where no one whispers after they're insulted again. Miguel stood. I volunteer to coordinate the cooking classes. Maybe I can help more. Linda stepped forward, voice trembling. I always thought my life was just drying glasses, but if what you're saying is true, then maybe I could teach proper sanitation to the new kids. And then, one by one, they stood. Not because Chloe was a Langston, but because she had just returned to them something long forgotten. Dignity. At the same time, a leaked internal email, an anonymous account posted on an F&B industry staff forum. The Lumiere princess disguised as a dishwasher, got water dumped on her head, then fired the abuser. Now she's back, not to retaliate, but to build a school for the ones society ignored. Justice doesn't have to scream. Sometimes it just takes someone quiet, long enough to act when it matters most. The post went viral. A hashtag began trending. Number sign from dish pit to power, end of meeting. A private word between Chloe and Miguel. You once said I treated dishwashing like punishment, she said. Miguel blinked. And now? Chloe smiled. Now I know. It was a test. 1 week after the staff meeting that launched Horizon, Lumiere was no longer just known for expensive French cuisine. It had become a symbol, a media sensation, a lesson in quiet power, rising from the last place anyone expected, the dish pit. And standing in the center of that storm wasn't Howard Langston, not the corporate spokesperson, but the same girl who once had dirty water thrown at her in front of guests. Chloe Langston. Monday, 9 a.m., the New York Beacon Press Hall. There wasn't a single seat left in the room. Reporters from the New York Times, Forbes, BuzzFeed, and TikTokers with millions of followers jostled for space. Behind the podium stood a large photograph. Chloe in her dish pit uniform, yellow gloves on, mop in hand, gazing calmly into the camera. Beneath it, bold letters, "Dignity is not a costume." The doors opened. Chloe walked in. No bodyguards, no PR entourage. Just Miguel, a few steps behind, bearing witness to everything she had endured. Ms. Langston, called out a white male reporter from the Post, not even waiting for her to sit. Why not take the easier route? You could have held a press conference from day one instead of pretending to be staff. Chloe looked up, her voice steady, not loud but clear. I wasn't pretending to be anyone. I did the real job, and I received the real treatment. A ripple of whispers moved across the room. Another reporter raised her hand. Some say you're using the media to whitewash Lumiere's brand after allegations of discrimination. How do you respond? Chloe paused, then tapped the projector. The screen behind her lit up with 4 clips. 1. Kara calling Linda Blackbird. Second, staff forced to work overtime with no clock-ins. 3. Chloe getting water thrown in her face mid-shift. 4. A VIP guest whispering to Kara, "She doesn't look like she belongs here." And Kara replying, "She's not real restaurant people anyway." The room fell completely silent. This happened, and no one in upper management ever saw it, because they never walked into the dish pit. Chloe stepped up to the podium. This time the light wasn't from a kitchen. It was from cameras finally realizing this story wasn't about drama. It was about an uncomfortable truth, changing the face of an entire industry. I don't need people to see me as a billionaire's daughter. I need them to understand that kindness doesn't start from the top. It must rise from the very bottom of the system. A female reporter wiped a tear. A BuzzFeed cameraman whispered, "My mom's a janitor. This girl is speaking for her." The press conference ended in applause. Not the polite clapping reserved for good PR, but the kind of applause reserved for bravery, for someone willing to wear shame to make truth undeniable. Later that evening, on the show Voices of America, Chloe appeared as a special guest. The host, a veteran journalist, leaned forward. If you could say one sentence to Kara, the woman who humiliated you, what would it be? Chloe looked directly into the camera. I forgive her, but I don't forget. And I'll make sure no one else ever has to go through that again. Not out of revenge, but because I know silence, left too long, destroys trust. Same time, emergency board meeting at Lumiere Group. Some executives suggested damage control, shut down Horizon to protect brand image. But Howard Langston stood up, looked each board member in the eye, and placed a small wooden tag Chloe had given him on the table. The people who scrub the floor carry your name too, he said slowly. If we're not brave enough to take responsibility, then we don't deserve to carry the name Lumiere. The meeting didn't end with a memo. It ended with a commitment. Chloe would serve as executive advisor for the next 6 months, and Horizon would be implemented across all national branches. Later that night, after the broadcast, as Chloe stepped off the studio set, an older woman in simple clothes approached. You don't know me, she said, but my daughter works at the Kansas City branch. Yesterday, she called for the first time in 4 months. She said, they're finally starting to listen, Mama. Chloe nodded, took the woman's hand. You're the reason I did this. A viral caption began spreading online, an image of Chloe in the dish pit, warm light from the dining room glowing behind her. The caption, she entered the kitchen with gloves. She left it with a movement. More than a month had passed since Chloe Langston stepped out of the dish pit and revealed who she truly was. And Lumiere Manhattan had changed, not by tossing out the old, but by peeling away the toxic layers to restore its original soul. There were no more averted eyes during shift changes, no more fearful whispers behind Kara's back. Instead, there were people calling each other by name during breaks. Laughter when a trainee proudly rinsed their first plate under Linda's watchful eye, and genuine shoulder taps when Miguel helped a young cook master the restaurant's signature dish. Wednesday, 8 a.m., first official Horizon meeting with Chloe as reform supervisor. On the table sat a list of over 60 employees enrolled in the Horizon program, a pathway where anyone, regardless of title, could train for management, culinary leadership, or finance, from servers and dishwashers to line cooks. Linda sat at the head of the table, highlighter in hand. Just a month ago, she had been screamed at by Kara. Today, she was the newly appointed lead instructor of advanced sanitation, a title created specifically for her. She spoke first. Her voice wavered a little, but her eyes were bright. I've cleaned over 25,000 glasses in my life, and today I realize, maybe not every glass was spotless, but each one had value, if someone was willing to see it. The room went quiet. Then applause. Miguel followed. I'm building a course called Leadership in the Kitchen, for anyone who's ever been passed over for promotion just because their name was hard to pronounce. A few chuckles. An Indian-American staffer gave Miguel a playful punch on the arm, nodding his thanks. Across other Lumiere branches, the ripple effect began in Lumiere Chicago. A brown-skinned server who had once been pressured to wear a tight dress emailed corporate, quoting Chloe's viral line, "No one should have to sacrifice their dignity to keep a job." 3 days later, the uniform policy was revised company-wide. Prioritize flexibility, no discrimination based on gender or body type. At the San Francisco branch, dishwashers were given the right to provide direct feedback on scheduling and working conditions. One of them said, back then, the dishwasher was broken for 6 months and nobody cared. Now, they replaced it in 3 days. Back in Manhattan, Chloe visited Linda during her first test training session, a small classroom with a whiteboard, projector, and 8 new hires, mostly immigrants. Linda stood at the front, holding a miniature kitchen model. This is the temperature scanner. It's not just here to pass inspections. It's to protect the people we serve, she explained. We don't just clean floors. We keep this place as safe as an operating room. Chloe stood quietly at the back, arms folded. In her eyes, something rare. Peace. Upstairs, an unexpected meeting with a familiar face. Holly, Kara's former right hand, walked into the office like someone who had never been taught to bow. She sat down and handed in a flawless quarterly report. Every page accounted for. Chloe glanced at her, then said gently, "You don't have to fear me." I don't fire people for what they did under someone else's shadow. I care about what you're doing now. Holly stayed silent, then quietly. I used to think you were just some PR stunt. And now? Chloe asked. Now I know. I missed a better path because I was too scared to disappoint the louder voice in the room. Chloe smiled. Then you just found your way back to that path. That evening, Chloe returned to the kitchen she once scrubbed. The lights were still on. Miguel was teaching a young cook how to slice onions without tears. Linda was stacking dish towels like they were calligraphy scrolls. Chloe didn't say anything. She just walked to one corner of the room, the spot where Kara once dumped cold water on her. She stood there for a few seconds. Linda approached. You remember that day? Of course, clearly. Linda nodded. But I think we should also remember the ones who stayed after that day. Chloe turned to her, warmth in her eyes. And those who once bowed their heads, who now stand tall. Closing, an internal email from Chloe to all staff across the country. No one is born at the bottom of a system, and no one stays at the top without understanding that. Restoration doesn't begin by tearing things down. It begins by calling the right things by their true names and choosing what deserves to stay. Chloe Langston. A new viral image appeared on social media. Linda stood in front of her training class, pointing to a sanitation chart. The caption, "She used to clean for them. Now she's teaching them how to lead." 3 months after the night Chloe Langston turned the tables at Lumiere Manhattan, the media storm hadn't calmed. If anything, it was still rising. Louder, broader, seemingly unstoppable. From dishwashing billionaire's daughter to face of hospitality reform, Chloe had become a generational icon, someone even seasoned CEOs couldn't ignore. But for Chloe, fame wasn't a reward. It was a consequence and a quiet challenge. Tuesday morning, Chloe's office, Lumiere Manhattan. On her desk were 3 major invitations. 1. 60 Minutes, a special interview titled, "Can an Empire Built on Compassion Actually Survive?" 2. Time Magazine, a Person of the Year nomination, with a pre-designed cover showing Chloe standing in a kitchen, with daylight pouring over a gleaming dish pit behind her. 3rd Davos 2026, an offer to speak on the topic, Redefining Power, Bottom-Up Leadership. Chloe read through each letter but didn't open them right away. She had promised herself, never let applause drown out the mission. Meanwhile, on social media, the hashtag #FromDishPit2Power hit 200 million views. A new viral video surfaced. Linda, the woman once polishing glasses in Kara's shadow, was now teaching a class on the clean cycle, clean hands, clean heart. In the clip, a student asked, "Did you ever think you'd be the one teaching here?" Linda smiled. "Number, I thought I'd keep wiping glasses until my hands gave out. But then a girl came along who was willing to sweat just to see what I'd seen every day." Same day, an exclusive interview with Howard Langston aired on Bloomberg. "What's it like seeing your daughter become a reform icon?" Howard sipped his coffee. His eyes had softened since we last saw him. "I used to think she was too soft to lead. Turns out, that's exactly what the world needed. She's soft where it matters, and tough where it counts." Back at Lumiere, Chloe was approached to lead a national initiative, Rebuild Hospitality, a government-backed campaign in partnership with major restaurant chains aimed at reforming labor conditions in the F&B industry after the pandemic and worker exodus. A senior official met with Chloe in person. During the meeting, he said, "We need your story. We need your voice. People believe you, and the government is starting to understand. Listening is the only path forward." Miguel, also in the room, tilted his head slightly, as if wondering, will she rise even higher or step aside before the system she changed swallows her? Chloe didn't answer then. After the meeting, she left the building, alone. That evening, Chloe sat alone in the old dish pit. She opened the wooden box that once held her yellow gloves. They were still there, no longer dirty, but still wrinkled, worn and heavier than any trophy. She flipped one inside out. There, in faded permanent marker, was the line she had written months ago. "Remember where you stood when no one clapped." At the same time, An internal email from Chloe was sent across the entire Lumiere system. The media calls me a leader now, but I don't want to be a destination. I want to be the launch pad for those who were once treated as roadblocks. If you've ever bowed your head to wash dishes, stayed silent out of fear of losing your job, or stood behind the curtain wondering, when will it be my turn? Then today the answer is, right now. Attached was a formal invitation. Chloe would host the first ever system-wide town hall, inviting not managers, but frontline workers from every branch to discuss reform. Town Hall Day, a gathering like no other. No luxury backdrops, no long linen-draped tables, just plastic chairs in a circle. Chloe sat in the center. A server from Ohio stood first. I used to hide my pregnancy because I was scared of losing shifts. Now I get schedule flexibility and time to care for my daughter. A South Asian chef from San Diego followed. I was passed over for promotion because my accent wasn't neutral. Now I teach a system-wide class on international chicken curry. Chloe listened to them all. She took notes. She didn't interrupt. Then someone asked, "What do you plan to do once the system is fully changed?" Chloe paused, then smiled. "Step back." The room blinked. Murmurs. "Not because I'm tired, but because once justice has a machine, it doesn't need the spark to stay lit. The person who lit the flame must eventually step aside, so others can step forward. I didn't create the light. I just helped remove a few shadows." A clip from the town hall went viral nationwide. Chloe, seated in the center of the circle, said, "You don't need to wear a suit to fix the system. Sometimes you just need to wear the gloves. Long enough." Monday. There was no ribbon-cutting ceremony, no red carpet, no microphones, no flashbulbs, no CEO delivering a speech. Just an ordinary Monday in mid-March. With sunlight quietly spreading across the kitchen floor of Lumiere, Manhattan, like a silent blessing no one needed to announce. In the far corner of the dish pit, once a nameless zone in the restaurant's kingdom, a small wooden plaque had just been installed. It was modest, just large enough to read while rinsing a plate or crouching to scrub the floor. Laser engraved were the words, "For those who were never called by name, but kept this place standing." No signature, no date, no mention in the company bulletin. But to those who had worked there, it was the most powerful manifesto they'd ever read. Early morning, Chloe walked through the kitchen, carrying a worn leather notebook. Miguel saw her. He was cradling his baby son Rafael, just 6 months old, on his first visit to the place where Daddy learned how to live with kindness. "Still writing by hand?" Miguel asked, glancing at the notebook. "Yeah," Chloe smiled. "Some things need to be written by hand, so when someone reads them again, they can still hear your heartbeat." Inside that notebook was a letter, written by Chloe, to herself and to the people she had met at the bottom of the system. "The day I walked into the dish pit, I didn't know I'd walk out with a new heart. I thought I was conducting an experiment. Turns out I was on a search. I found Linda, the woman who cleaned every glass as if it were someone's portrait. I found Jose, the man who never spoke for 3 weeks, but swapped shifts for sick coworkers without ever asking for credit. I found Miguel, who understood that not every good cook knows how to teach confidence in the kitchen. And I found myself, not in the executive suite mirror, but in the puddle of water beneath a kitchen sink, reflecting back the overhead lights. If one day you feel like you're being treated as if you have no name, remember, light doesn't come from a business card. It comes from how you choose to stay standing when no one stands with you." Midday, Chloe placed the notebook into a small wooden box and left it in the shared locker area for staff. She didn't leave her name, but on the last page, tucked inside, was a small photo. Chloe and Linda standing side by side, beaming, both still wearing gloves. Handwritten below it, "If you ever feel invisible, look closer. There's a mirror inside this dish pit, and it sees you." That afternoon, Linda found the notebook. She didn't cry. She simply sat down on the bench beside the glass rinser and turned the pages, as if tracing the old scars on her own hands. When she reached the final line, she closed the notebook, pressed it to her chest, and looked out the kitchen's glass door. just in time to see Chloe walking away. For the last time. Linda didn't call out. She didn't need to. She knew. True kindness doesn't bow when it exits. It leaves behind something stronger. That evening, Chloe left Lumiere Manhattan like any ordinary person. No send-off, no limo, no flowers. She wore a hoodie, carried a backpack, and exited through the back door. The same one she had entered on her very first day, back when her name tag said Chloe Rains. Before she left, she turned and looked at the wooden plaque one last time. A new staff member was washing dishes. A slender young woman of Asian descent, likely just a few weeks into the job. She caught Chloe's eye by chance, bowed slightly, then quietly returned to work. Chloe stepped out, but before she reached the sidewalk, a voice called after her. "Ms. Langston!" She turned. The young woman jogged up, slightly breathless. "That sign in the kitchen, you put that there, didn't you?" Chloe didn't answer directly. She just smiled. "If you see yourself in it, then yes, I did." Then she turned to go, leaving behind a girl standing in the golden New York sunset. Perhaps for the first time, feeling like she truly belonged somewhere. A short clip uploaded by Linda appeared on Lumiere's internal network, no caption. Just a hand wiping down the wooden plaque, pausing gently over the line. Those who were never called by name. Beneath the video, a comment from a staff member at the Dallas branch. "I don't know your name, but you just reminded me. I'm still here, and that means something." Early April in New York always carries a strange contrast. Warm spring sun, but just enough lingering cold in the wind to remind you that winter's grip hasn't fully let go. But on the corner of 45th and Madison, inside a restaurant called Lumiere, the air wasn't conflicted. It was clear, decisive, as if the building itself knew it was stepping into a new era. A small sign had been mounted near the employee entrance, a space once used just for shift schedules. Now it read, "Lumiere, now under new standards." And for once, no one scoffed at it like some marketing gimmick, because everyone knew this wasn't branding, it was a way of life. 8 a.m. Chloe Langston returned to Lumiere one last time. Not to supervise, not to manage, not even to say goodbye. She was there to witness history, the launch of Lumiere's new system-wide operating standards, co-written and co-defined by the very people who once stood at the bottom. Linda was the host of the ceremony, wearing a crisp white shirt, black slacks, and a name tag that now read, Operations Mentor. Next to her stood Miguel, now officially culinary director. Not thanks to an Ivy League diploma, but thanks to the trust of dozens who had worked beside him. Linda spoke first. She didn't read from a script. She told a story. 120 days ago, I thought I'd retire quietly, forgotten. But today I'm standing here to tell you, if you've ever thought your worth was measured by a pay stub, you were wrong. Your worth lives in the things you didn't walk away from, even when everyone else did. Miguel followed. I used to think what I lacked was a degree, but what I truly needed was a system that listened, and now we're building one. Shift by shift, apprentice by apprentice, dish by dish, signed with the name of the person who cooked it. Chloe sat quietly in the last row, just the way she wanted. She wore a simple gray sweater, hair down, no spotlight, no applause. But her eyes lit up every time someone mentioned something that, just 3 months ago, had seemed impossible. Jake, a 19-year-old dishwasher, took the mic. I never thought a dropout like me could train for restaurant management. But then Miss Linda told me, we'll teach you, just stand your ground long enough. Right after the announcement, a new sign was installed in the main kitchen. It wasn't a slogan. It wasn't a mandate. It was a definition. Respect is not a reward. It's the starting point. Midway through the day, Chloe quietly slipped out the back. A few people noticed and moved to say goodbye, but she shook her head gently, as if to say, you don't need to. I'll still be here, just not up front. She walked back to the dish pit, her first visit in weeks. The space once seen as the lowest rung was now the heart of the new standard. The industrial rinsing machine had been replaced with an eco-friendly model. The tool racks were lowered to ergonomic height to prevent back pain. A small cactus sat beside the sink, brought in by new hires. The wooden plaque still hung proudly. For those who were never called by name, but kept this place standing. Chloe gently touched the steel rim of the sink, then nodded quietly. That afternoon, across all Lumiere's social media platforms, no product ads, no buffet discounts, just a 45-second video, no voiceover, no dramatic music, only staff, from chefs and dishwashers to servers, saying their name, where they're from, and one line, "I am Lumiere, and I am heard." The final frame showed Chloe, standing behind the kitchen counter, holding a plain white plate and setting it down gently on the table, as if laying down a new foundation for the entire service culture. A caption pinned to Lumiere's official website. "It took a girl in gloves to remind us that before we serve perfection, we must serve each other." That night, Chloe sat alone in her small apartment, bathed in soft light. She turned on the radio. Jazz drifted through the air. Duke Ellington's in a sentimental mood. No one called her CEO. No one emailed her asking about next steps. No media. No fanfare. Just her. And the quiet knowing that her work had reached the people who mattered most. She opened her notebook and wrote a single line. "The system didn't change because I shouted. It changed because I chose to listen longer than it ignored me." Some revolutions don't roar. They stand still in the storm and refuse to bow. Chloe didn't strike back. She didn't destroy. She washed dishes, scrubbed toilets, and endured cruelty without defense. But in that silence, she heard something deeper. Don't lead with anger. Lead with the kind of kindness no one expects. And by the time Kara realized the truth, it was too late. The very kindness she once mocked had become the reason she lost everything. Chloe didn't dismantle the restaurant. She rebuilt it, person by person, policy by policy, truth by truth. Do you know someone like Chloe? Someone underestimated, someone enduring quietly, someone doing the right thing without ever needing praise? If so, share this video with them. You might be giving them the last bit of hope they need to keep believing in fairness. And if you believe that kindness offered at the right moment can rebuild an entire system, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and keep following the dishwasher's daughter. What's ahead may bring tears or make you jump to your feet in satisfaction. Because sometimes justice doesn't wear a suit. It wears an apron and yellow gloves. Mask.